insurance business. But I have a son, my oldest son, who's 39 now, was hit about a year and a half ago as a young lady who just started driving, didn't understand the yellow blinking lights. Have you seen those? Where you can go. She thought it was going to turn red. She thought she hit the right of way. She turned right in front of my son, and he hit her going about 45 miles an hour. Well, he's back to work, but he missed about 6 months. He's had 2 operations, and he's over $200,000 in medicals. And I had told all my kids the same thing. Get that just in case. The likelihood is that you'll never use it. But it's usually about $10 more a month on your policy. Well, his medicals are $200,000. Her policy was $100,000. And do they disparage unions? No. The union he belongs to as a plumber and pipe fitter has such an egregious subrogation agreement for health coverage that they get everything he recovers. So I said, well, I'll represent you. They can't take attorney's fees. And they sent me their agreement that says, yes, we get attorney's fees as well. So I'm in a battle with them and have been for years saying, well, I won't collect it. I'm just going to leave it with the liability policy, and I'll have to make Fisher cut bait at some time. But get that in case, because there's a lot of people running around with minimum coverage, and it won't cover your vehicle, let alone major medicals. That's the one aside. Let's go into here. The other one you want to, and this is, if you're ever asked to serve on a board, or you ask people to serve on a board, you want D&O coverage, okay? You want D&O? Johnny, you want to take 30 seconds and explain D&O coverage?
Directors and officers coverage protects directors and officers of a company or organization from risks that are particular to them. It doesn't cover, again, the other areas that they've talked about, injury, damage to property, things like that. It's for you as a fiduciary. So if you as the board lose all the money that's in the fair reserve, you've let someone abscond with it, you didn't properly protect it, or you decided to that the board chair was going to take last year's reserves, and when they go to Vegas to look at events that you might want to use for next year's show, and they're at the fair and event show in Vegas, that they were going to double the money that the board had by laying it all on black. That would be a D&O claim. It's not going to be covered by any of your other policies, and you want your board members to have that type of coverage.
And it also provides coverage for discrimination, harassment, wrongful termination claims. Again, if you're in good faith. Everything is related to your good faith, and that's what I tell people. If you're trying to do your best, what we try and do from the county attorney's office and what the Utah County's indemnity pool tries to do is make sure you can sleep at night. So when that event occurs, you're not in trouble and you don't have sleepless nights about that. Let's go on to the next page. Here is the Utah statute covering immunity for persons involved in voluntary services. Now, if you have immunity, can they still sue you? Yeah, dang it, it shouldn't be that way. And our state judges, federal judges are better at allowing people out, in my opinion, than state judges early on in a suit. Because if you have immunity, immunity means immunity from suit. And so, Judge, we ought to file a motion to dismiss, and you ought to decide it this week. Well, the plaintiffs are, we've got to have discovery, Judge. We've got some things we need to look into and do this. And so the suit goes on and usually goes until you have a motion for summary judgment. But not always. And I think we on the defense bar have to emphasize that more about its immunity from suit and get out early. Litigation is expensive. Another aside. Years ago, Ogden City, Weaver County, and the Woodbury Corporation were involved in a lawsuit involving millions of dollars. And Ogden City made, in my opinion, please don't repeat this either, some foolish decisions about tearing down a building that belonged to Woodbury and said, we're going to go ahead and tear this down because we think the land's worth more than the building. So they tore it down, and I remember this because we were on the side of Woodbury against Ogden City. It was a strain at that time between the two attorney's offices, and I remember the senior guy in Woodbury saying, does Ogden City think that they have more money than I do? And that's what litigation is. It's modern warfare. And too often it comes down to egos and emotions. And when you get there, things go on and on longer than they should. So, how did I do that aside and get away from this? Here's what you need to do. Look at the definition. Public entity means the state or any political subdivision of it, or any office, department, division, board, agency, commission, council, authority, institutional, hospital, schools, college, blah, blah, blah. Are y'all covered in here? Yep, you're covered. It does not, oh, I was going to point to Johnny's slide again. If you're a nonprofit, it may not apply. Okay? But here's what you get if you're a volunteer for governmental entity, and everybody's in counties here, right? So we see the word county there, and we're going to say we're going to get immunity. And by the way, a volunteer facilitator, well, I think it's in the next section. And a couple of typos in here. I don't reward people for finding typos, so don't say it. Okay? If you're a person dropping down to 201, performing services on a voluntary basis without compensation under the general supervision of and on behalf of any public entity, and we've decided we're all included in that, is immune from liability with respect to any decisions or actions taken other than in connection with the operation of a motor vehicle. So they've taken the operation of a motor vehicle out, their insurance is going to have to so that's not going to cover. Is that how you read it, Johnny and Neil? Yes, I'm looking for support. Taken during the course of those services, unless it is established that such decisions or actions were grossly negligent, not made in good faith, or made maliciously. So if Jan is mad at me, her last name's Wilson too. Sometimes she claims me as a cousin, even though we're not. I always have claimed her as a cousin. If she decides she's mad at me one day and as a volunteer, not as a paid county employee, but she is, runs me over, is she covered by this act? Might be. Maybe they'll say killing lawyers is not malicious.
Public service.
That's the story I got here about the guy hated lawyers and driving alongside the road and he saw a priest and picked the priest up, stopped, you need a ride, yeah, about 5 miles down the road. So he hits lawyers wherever he could. And he's just trying to restate himself because he sees a group of 3 lawyers walking down and he swerves and he thinks, oh gosh, the priest is in here, I can't do that. So he just misses him and says, sorry, Father, I almost hit those lawyers. But he heard a big thump at the same time. And the priest says, it's all right, I got him with the car door. So there's actually tons of good lawyers around. There's a few that say that. Okay. So you're supposed to be immune unless you're grossly negligent, you don't make a decision in good faith, or you made maliciously. But good faith is probably the one that may come up in the instance of events and fairs where you circumvent your policies and procedures. Policies and procedures are always your protection. If they're adopted by the county commission or whoever, live by those and then you have some protection. And again, that's what it's about. You guys have tough jobs, and I know especially around fair time. I don't dare call Jan during fair time, even though she's still civil. She's running 24/7. It's a stressful time for you. And sometimes we make mistakes when we're under stress. But look for support that you need when you need it, especially, again, from your county attorney, your county commission, whoever.
And the really important thing there is that if you review your policies and know that when crunch time comes every single year, you don't follow it, then get your policy changed.
Yep.
The courts aren't looking to see if you have the best policy in the state. They're looking if you are following your policy. So if your policy requires things of you that aren't required by statute and you set the bar really high, put the bar back down to where you can get over it. Because you're going to be called to the carpet if you're not following your own policy. Even if that policy isn't the best policy out there. And the plaintiff's attorneys will argue their policy should have been X, and it was only Y. The judge doesn't get to question that so much. He only gets to say their policy was Y, they did Y, they're good. Is that, would you agree with that?
That's correct, as long as your policy complies with the law. So do that. In fact, we had in my opinion, a very good director over our jail for a lot of years. We've been down to the Utah State Prison. He would rather not have a policy and do it correctly than have a policy he didn't follow. And that's what you need to do. Make sure your policies, you know, we cheat, I borrow this stuff, carve it down from others. Make sure what you do complies, or what your actions comport to your policy. If not, as Johnny said, change the policy. That's more important, okay? So you know, okay, nothing in this chapter shall preclude legal action taken against a public entity for any injury occurring. So they still get to sue the county possibly if there's an error. But you're covered, and that's what you want. You want the deep pocket. That's what plaintiffs' attorneys want. I love these plaintiffs' attorneys who say, we're in this to help people. But they hurry and find out what the insurance limits there are, and then they decide whether they're really charitable or not. If there's nothing there, they usually say, gosh, I'm too busy for this right now. That's not always the case. I'm being tough on lawyers. And we need another lawyer joke. How do you get a lawyer out of a tree? Anybody? Cut the tree down as close. Cut the rope. Okay? These are mean-spirited, and my daughter used to collect these. In fact, I'll do one more. What's the difference between a lawyer and an onion? I'll just be quick. People cry when they slice and dice it. I thought that was the most mean-spirited of all. Okay, here's another chapter. Now remember, that's in the code, Utah code we just looked at. This one's in the Utah code as well. The first one gives you immunity. This one tells you how to get that immunity and make sure you have it, okay, for you and your volunteers. As used in this chapter, I'm skipping down to sub 2. Go to B, a county, city, town, school. Agency means a county, city, town. All roads stop at county. So you're an agency under this statute, okay? Now it's going to give you some other definitions that we need to pay attention to. Not so much, unless you use them, compensatory service worker. Jan and Jen, you use our inmates for stuff from time to time. So that's a compensatory service worker. They're covered in the code. And we cover them for what? Medical expenses, right, Johnny? If they are injured while they're providing that service, they get medical expenses in the end. And I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's the one I think that will mostly apply to you. Volunteer means any person who donates service without pay or other compensation except expenses actually and reasonably incurred as is approved by the supervising agency. So what do lawyers do? They parse words, they cut them out, and plaintiff's attorney are looking for exception there. So volunteer means a person who donates service. So as you put on your fairs or your events, you're going to ask people to come and donate time, right? And help you put on that event. Without pay, you're not paying. Sir?
Can I give you 2 examples and ask how this fits in?
Sure.
If you have a 4-H person, they're employed by 4-H and they come and volunteer on your board, and they do 4-H activities for your fair, are they a volunteer or are they a volunteer for you? Does that make sense?
Yes. And we're going to come to that question in a minute. Remind me when we get to who is a volunteer.
Okay, now let me throw one more complication.
Yes.
One of our really good livestock guys is a county employee who volunteers for 4-H and comes down and works at the fair. So we'll put that in the next 2.
Okay. You want me to cheat right now and say, ask your county attorney like Johnny did? That's the only safe answer I'm going to get you. I would go with what they say. But we'll parse that out a little bit too. Okay? As approved by the supervising agency. So you're going to approve this volunteer. And we're supposed to do that in a way, well, let's go with what a volunteer does not include. A person participating in human subjects research, we'll skip that one, a compensatory service worker. So the inmates don't get to be volunteers, they're compensatory service workers. So we'll keep that in that group. Volunteer includes a juror or potential juror of hearing, we don't care about that one. Volunteer facilitator is probably going to be your next speaker. She's probably a volunteer facilitator. As I did a little look at who was speaking today. But it's usually a nonprofit or business that helps provide volunteers for others.